The chaos we're going through on our planet right now has really just begun. It's the macroscopic scale of what scientists call in the laboratory a phase transition. To understand why it has come, let's look at it from their level, from the scientific level, from physics, more particularly thermodynamics. I studied it with a highly acclaimed physicist, Dr. Lawrence Domash, before studying with world-renowned Harvard quantum physicist Dr. John Hagelin, who won the Kilby Award for the most elegant grand unification theory, and he worked at SLAC and CERN, organizations that organize studies of particle accelerators, and with cosmologists to determine how the universe works. Dr. Hagelin uses quantum physics to explain how these groups of meditators being created all over the world super radiate brain coherence to actually bring peace to the world. This is why world consciousness is rising. These groups are going on right now. And the pundits, Maharishi trained, 150,000 of them, have been going on for a long time, doing the World Peace Yagya. It's a system of chanting sounds that have an effect on the environment, like outward mantras. To illustrate why a short period of chaos must come and must go, we're going to look at an active state in a laboratory and cool it down to a super orderly state at 2 degrees away from absolute zero temperature. Very cold. Absolute zero is minus 271 degrees centigrade, which is minus 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. So far, the closest we can get to absolute zero temperature is 38 trillionths of a degree Celsius above absolute zero. Close enough. Let's see what happens at these extremely low temperatures. We'll take the example of using helium gas, starting at room temperature and cooling it, just to see what happens. Helium-4 is what's used in the labs. It's an isotope, but we'll just call it helium. We don't have time to go into elementary particles like bosons and fermions, which are part of the process, so I'll explain it in simple terms. Fundamentally, it goes like this. In a laboratory, when we increase heat, we create entropy, disorder, disintegration, more random activity. That's what entropy is. It decays. If we put a car out into a field on the farm and just ignore it, after some time it'll rust some more, and in time the wind blows it away particle by particle, and then there's no more car. What you don't see is order creating itself. You don't see a car form out there in the weeds. So in time, things will disintegrate. Entropy takes over. Entropy is like fire, heat, motion, a great motion in molecular structure. And this occurs, or non-structure in this case, it occurs at the atomic and molecular level, and even deeper into finer particles. In a gas, in a state of heat, the activity, even at room temperature, that's hot enough, the activity of helium atoms is random, chaotic, and quick moving. Something like this. Now, I found this generic animation on the net, but I don't know what color helium gas is at that submicroscopic level. No one does. But you get the idea. Increasing heat causes greater molecular activity and therefore greater chaos in that molecular activity. In like turn, this is important, when we decrease the temperature, the molecular activity slows down and at the same time becomes more orderly. So orderly, in fact, that the molecules will actually start to arrange themselves in rows. So at cold temperatures, that previously random helium gas condenses to become liquid helium, a more orderly state with, yes, less activity, stillness, silence, peace, as we see here. When water cools to become ice, we see the molecules become less active, and they start to arrange themselves in an extremely orderly pattern. They are at the top, and they actually line up in orderly rows. And now it gets interesting. Something astounding happens when you cool it further toward absolute zero temperature. No molecular activity. Total peace at almost absolute zero temperature, about 2 degrees above. That liquid helium exhibits qualities of the absolute, that level of the infinite, known to quantum physics as the unified field, a field that underlies and supports everything in existence, everything in the universe. And that silence manifests, expresses itself as sounds, the Vedic sounds that structure all of creation. Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda. 4 volumes written down. This is simply the basics of all of the sounds of Veda, which means knowledge. But here's the main point I want to make. As the liquid helium approaches 2 degrees above absolute zero, it boils up. Very strange. It boils up as if it were hot. A strange phenomenon, a quandary. It's a temporary state of chaos. Then, very suddenly, the chaos stops, and the liquid helium goes flat, completely still. It becomes what's called a superfluid. This is called the Bose-Einstein condensate. As you lower the temperature even further, nothing else seems to happen. This is one of the great phenomena in 20th century physics. This superfluid displays some really odd properties. Superfluid helium can do things we might have believed impossible. That is, and it seems to defy the laws of physics. It exhibits properties of the infinite. Properties of the unified field that is infinite silence, eternal, beyond time and space. That transcendental field, and yet it's not transcendental. It's in the material world. The world of constant movement and change. The infinite silence is displayed in the relative world. Seemingly impossible. The world of activity. This is what cold temperatures do. For example, this is a special beaker shown here with it's an unglazed ceramic bottom of ultrafine porosity. It's specially made to hold liquid helium. But, now that's just liquid helium. But the moment the liquid becomes a superfluid, it leaks through that special container. This kind of flow is called a superflow. It will also defy gravity. It will climb up the walls of the container and down the outside and escape the container and drip to the floor. This is because a superfluid has what's called zero viscosity. It can even produce a frictionless fountain, as you see here, one that never stops flowing. And if you stir it once, disregarding a fountain, if it's just sitting there and you stir it, it will spin forever, so long as it remains near absolute zero temperature. Qualities of the absolute, qualities of the infinite, in a non-infinite world. Superfluidity and superconductivity became baffling concepts for scientists because they're still looking for answers in the relative world, not willing to admit that this other world even exists, the world of the absolute. They've talked about it, they want to create a theory for it. They don't have that theory, not a complete one, which we can experience ourselves, this field of the infinite. Our own awareness can become that state using the right mental technique. That is the eternal field of consciousness, which underlies the whole universe and is accessible to everyone at any time. We don't need M theory, the mother theory, or mega theory to prove it exists. That's usually the first stage before experiments to prove it. To prove it exists, you would need an atomic accelerator as big as the universe. It's unlikely we'll be able to build one of those to prove it materially. But you can prove it to yourself by closing your eyes and experiencing that state as yourself. The experiment is available now. The way to prove its existence is to use the Transcendental Meditation technique and experience it directly as your own conscious awareness in the very first meditation, without any effort. There's the proof. This fourth state of consciousness is transcendental to the relative world we all know. You have to transcend, go beyond the relative world. Go beyond thought. Go beyond it to experience yourself as unbounded awareness. And that is normal life, to have it at all times. Otherwise, it's not even human life. Finally experienced. That is your true nature, your identity, unboundedness. That will be a permanent reality by the end of this year for everyone who can vibrate at that high level of spiritual life. Heaven is coming to earth. And to live in that high realm, that celestial realm, in this material world, the nervous system has to be cultured. And that is why we need to use the mind to influence the body. They're interconnected. So when the mind settles down to, let's call it a cold state, where there's less activity in the mind, and less random activity, and greater order in the thinking process, in the brainwave activity, then we've experienced that state. The chaos we are experiencing on all levels of the relative world is the phase transition of the Earth, similar to the phase transition of liquid helium to a superfluid. A state of perfect order on a macroscopic scale over our whole planet. And these groups of siddhas and pundits are creating it right now. This is why purity is rising, and this big change is taking place. That explains it all. We've already done it. Created these groups before in many experiments, many gatherings all over the world. I was in one here in the United States with 8,000 people. Worldwide order increased during those 10 days. There were fewer war deaths during those 10 days, fewer accidents reported by insurance companies, fewer admissions to hospitals and mental hospitals, fewer crimes. The studies were published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, which validates the experiment as carefully carried out and being truly scientific. How these groups are able to do that, well, that'll require a video on quantum fields known in the new physics. I'll do one of those later. The physics that shows us action at a distance, that's quantum physics. How the experience of orderly brain function and unbounded awareness can super radiate that orderliness, that peace, that quietude, that cold state, if you will, and affect the whole world. We experience that everything in the universe is not only connected, but that it can be influenced from a distance. Like paired electrons. One spins this way, the other spins the other way, instantly, without delay. Even if they're separated by light years, there's no delay. There's no travel of light between them to allow them to communicate, even on the other side of the universe. This proves that everything in the universe is right here. We've measured the brain waves of those practicing these mental techniques. It raises brainwave coherence profoundly. The peaks in the brain waves become in step with each other, aligned with each other in the same way that the helium molecules become orderly and aligned as they approached that field that is infinite. Practiced in a group of at least 10,000 practitioners, superradiance occurs, and it radiates to the whole world to create a rise in orderliness on all levels of life. Maharishi arranged one of these groups to end World War II. That means world consciousness is rising, and why all these great inventions are being made, and why these great new discoveries in science are coming about, like the end of Darwinian evolution, and why some of the magas are waking up. And as that purity rises on earth, as that orderliness rises, we approach a temporary period of chaos in the way people think. Insanity rises, and chaos and world events rise. Tyrants rise and do insane things, like take over other countries, like Putin and Trump. The purity, and if he hasn't already, he will, because of that shift I told you about in Rahu. The purity continues, and then there's a sudden shift that brings qualities of the infinite to the surface of the material world, just as it did on all levels with the superfluid helium. And on a macroscopic scale, it happens all over the world. And that is why we're going through this, and why the infinite must take over. And that is why it's called heaven coming to earth.